Alright, this is Derek Logue of Once Fallen, and I'm here with Jenny from SOSEN, and old Harry back here is with us as well. And we wanted to give a video review of our wonderful trip to Portland, Maine, and the ARM art protest. And I have to say first and foremost that getting up to Portland was a little bit of a disaster. Amtrak, as those who follow me on Twitter know, Amtrak lost my luggage. And so we kind of had a bit of a problem because we only had half a dozen pieces of art actually ready for the event, as opposed to the 24 that I was supposed to have because of the mishap. So don't want to get too deep into that story, but you know, we did lose the art, and I had to go spend a little extra money to make up for the event. And of course, along the way, we found old Harry back here. And since the University of Southern Maine's mascot is a husky, we thought it would make a great addition to our art show protest. So anyways, to kind of review why we were there, back in May of this year, there was an art display at the University of Southern Maine in Portland, Maine. And so there was a story that came out that art had been removed from the art show because one of the people that had contributed to this art event was a registered citizen, and his offense was 20 years ago. So we went there to, as a protest of the event. And since it involved art from registered citizens, I've spent the last few months soliciting artists that are on the registry to send me their art so I can display it on campus. So we got there late Monday night, and everything. We had to prepare a little bit extra because some of our art was missing. So all of Tuesday I had to go out. Thankfully, some of the submissions to the art show was in the form of photographs. So it was just a matter of me going and getting photographs printed out and put into frames, and plus I had a display. I was supposed to have got 2 displays, but since I was only expecting to have a dozen pieces total, including the replacement art, I only picked up one of the displays, and I didn't pick up a table. So anyways, we ran around like a chicken with our head cut off pretty much all that day, but we got everything there. And so Wednesday morning we set up, and while we were setting up, people were already coming over and seeing the art that we had put up. Jenny and Will from SOSEN had brought half a dozen pieces of art, so we already had some to show, plus the photographs. So people were already coming up and speaking to us. And another SOSEN staff member who goes by the name Tigger showed up as well, and so we had 4 different brochures. 3 of them are SOSEN brochures. One of them was one that I made specifically for the event. So anyways, this was Jenny's first time doing a public awareness campaign. So
my very first time.
And so you were very nervous about the event.
In the beginning, yes, I was very nervous. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, how I would react, but I enjoyed letting people know the truth about the registry and how it is unconstitutional and how it separates families and discriminates against the registered citizens.
Well, we'll talk about how the event unfolded while we were there, because that's what everybody's really going to be wondering, exactly what happened while we were there. Let's say this much: I believe that it was a largely positive event. Most of the people that walked up to us, that spoke to us both, and even ones that had told us that they were victims of a sexual assault, were in agreement with the things we were saying. We explained to individuals why we were there. We believe that people who've served time deserve a chance to become a contributive member of society, and that we explained to them that we're not out here to advocate abolishing stuff like age of consent or whatever, that it's not about undoing punishment for wrongdoing, but allowing them to do something productive in their lives upon their release. And I think most people got the message. I mean, I believe that a lot of people shared their personal stories with us, and even after doing so, they're like, well, I agree with everything you're saying, which was kind of surprising. I mean, this was a liberal college that had a feminist degree, a gender and liberal studies
Yes.
Degree. So, we were kind of expecting a little more hatred than we got, and we didn't really receive that many bad experiences. I mean, there was a couple of knuckleheads out there. You can tell them about that one in particular if you would like.
Oh, well, at lunchtime, the lunch break of the college, Derek found out that his luggage had supposedly been found, and he could go pick up a piece. Well, Tigger from SOSEN helped him go to pick up a piece. I was left alone, and the lunch crowd came up. There were very many women, and very many of them were pro-Me Too. And I was stuck with a big crowd there. And I felt almost like a pastor preaching to a congregation about this. There were so many. And many of them, I was surprised, wanted to learn more and did agree about abolishing the registry, even though they were at first horrified that we wanted to abolish it and that we were against punishing, or so they thought. But one woman, I handed her a pamphlet. She glanced at it and shoved it back in my hand, and she said, "No, I better not. I'm all for the registry. These people need to be punished more severely," and she stomped off. Quite a few others were very excited and said, "I've got to read this. I really agree with this. Children should stay with their parents, and people should not be divided like this. We should all have freedom of speech." And they wanted more information, and they asked me more information. It was very exciting, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, in the past, I've always worked with Tom Addison.
Yes.
I've always done. This is the first time I've had an event where Tom wasn't a part of it. Now, one of the things that Tom and I always do is we sort of do like this informal count of people who were receptive to our message and people who weren't, and I would say that the numbers were certainly in our favor. The vast majority of people came up and talked to us for long periods of time, and they could relate to our message, because they can kind of see where there was a problem, and that they didn't like that somebody's art was being censored. I think one of the people that we spoke to said, well, there's things on campus now that they're promoting that they disagree with. But of course they recognize that those people had a right to have their stuff out there. It's like, well, if you're going to allow this to have these people to express something, then why not this other group? So most people were receptive to it. I think one person, of the people who got offended, there wasn't really that many of them. Interesting enough, one of the worst ones that were offended by what we were doing actually wasn't offended by the sex offender aspect. They were offended by the fact that I had this sign that said, "Shame on USM President Glenn Cummings," and she was going off about how nice a guy he was. And the irony of it was that she had expressed to me that she supported the sex offender registry and that it was such a good thing, but at the same time she started railing on us about how we shouldn't be shaming the university president for making a bad decision. And I'm like, well, isn't that kind of ironic, because the sex offender registry is this shaming tool. That's
Yes.
why people, for the most part, support the registries, because they want people to be named and shamed. So you're basically complaining to us for doing the same thing that you support when it comes, people on the when it comes to people on the registry. And she kind of walked off in a huff. But
Exactly.
and I had this one guy when Ginny went and took a break, and after Tigger had already left for the day, and I was out there alone, I had this one guy who drove by a couple of times shouting obscenities and flipping me off and whatnot. But we usually get one of the but I warned Ginny we was going to get a couple of those types. I get them with Tom.
I was expecting
the drive,
worse.
the drive by, expecting worse. I mean, in all honesty, we're going to a liberal college, and of course, within the last couple of years, college campuses have kind of been a bastion of the feminist movement, Me Too, the campus assault stuff. And so we were kind of expecting a little bit more heat than we got. I mean, but I think it was kind of the opposite effect. And of course, the real star of the show was old Harry back here. People. He. Yeah, tell him how you feel about it. Huh? Money well spent, I'd say.
Sounds like he agrees.
Yes. Well, he was certainly a hit. We had
Yes.
we had Harry completely put together, and in his arms, he's a werewolf, so he had his claws out, and people thought he was the USM mascot, so people were coming up and taking selfies with him,
Yes.
and of course,
During the lunch break,
Yes.
I had people coming up and saying, "Oh, the college mascot! Can I get a selfie with him?" Snap, snap.
yeah, and but it brought people to us, and so so that was like people saw the art, and then they saw Harry, and then they see shame on USM President Glenn Cummings. Of course, Harry had a U.S. Constitution ripped in half, and so people would that got a lot of attention. So people were like, "Well, what's this about?" So it gave us the opportunity to approach them because we weren't really aggressive. We didn't have to be aggressive and try to stop people. People were just coming up to us because the way we set everything up brought people's attention. What is this about? This is something out of the ordinary, and so they would approach us. So we didn't have to work too hard to get attention. We were in the student newspaper, and they did an article. I have to clarify one thing about that student paper, though. There was some confusion because the student who wrote the newspaper article confused the story from SOSEN. We had a SOSEN brochure that one of the SOSEN brochures is entitled "My Family is Like Your Family." I do not know who wrote that particular one. That brochure has been available on SOSEN for 6-7 years now. I'm not sure if the person who wrote it is even a member today.
They contributed it anonymously. Their
Yes.
story.
Well, SOSEN years ago. I mean,
Yes.
before you became
yes.
even before you were a staffer at SOSEN, there was a project where SOSEN makes brochures. As a matter of fact, if you go to sosen.org right now, there should be a section on the front page of their website to take you to the brochures. You can download the
Yes.
brochures yourself and print them out. And as a matter of fact, I suggest people have been doing that for years because I would like for people to take these brochures, drop them off somewhere where it's a way to either at the registration office or at the public library or something. But even just doing a few of these, you're reaching out to people. So we have these brochures in place, and of course, SOSEN member, Tigger had printed some out. Will had
Yes.
printed some out for you to take to Maine with us, and so we had that one. And so they, for some reason, thought that was our story. I guess they thought we were the. I guess they figured that just assumed we were like the husband and wife that was listed in
Yes,
the.
a few people did, and one of them thought it was my story.
Yeah.
And I had to explain, no, I'm not a registrant. At one time, I was a victim. If you want to call me a victim, I was raped by a sheriff's son when I was in high school. But I explained to the people that's done, that's over with, and I have gone on. Everyone handles the situation differently, of course, but I have gone on with my life, and I still do not believe that someone should be shamed or punished for life for a mistake they may have made before.
Yeah. Well, and I explained to people that we weren't out there to say that people should be punished. We just simply say when their time is up, we want them to have the opportunity to become productive members of society. And if you support the registries, then you support recidivism because it increases recidivism. And I think people got the message.
Yes, they did.
And I think I was, honestly, I was a little bit surprised to have people profess to be victims and then say, I agree with you, because so much when we're arguing with people on the internet, they usually use that as a way to try to shut us up and invalidate our message. But when you're dealing with real human beings instead of being behind a computer screen, the attitude is completely different, and people will see, oh, I'm just not, I'm not just out there, behaving in the way that I guess people assume we behave online, and it's a completely different experience. So I really hope that we get other people to do this. As a matter of fact, ever since I've come back from this event, people have asked me if we are going to do more of these events, and the answer is yes.
I would like to.
Okay, I went into debt doing this. At the time of this is a week. This is 1 week removed. I'm $500 in the hole. However, the one thing about it is, now that I have the art, and now that we've had our first experience in doing this, now we kind of know how to do that. How to roll. Future events won't be targeted. This was a targeted campaign specifically because of the events that happened at USM that inspired us to do this. However, what we learned from the event is that we can turn this into a public awareness campaign, and we can take the art with us. We could take Harry along for the ride. We'll take Harry and maybe to other places that have huskies and whatnot as mascots, and
or we can incorporate him into other things.
Yes, and we can have the art with us and make it more of a just public awareness campaign, because people come to us, they see what we're doing, it's something different. They saw the Anti-Registry movement banner out there, and Anti-Registry movement, what's that? And so, oh, well, let me explain to you. And so we explain, we were surprisingly, we were kind of surprised that people were very receptive to the message, all around. We expected a lot more heat than we got, and everything, but we can do a lot more of these, and in the future it won't be quite as expensive, because now we kind of have an idea how to do them, what it will take for us to put together displays for the events, and I'd be willing to send the art to to other groups as needed, as long as they send it back when they're done, if they want to do similar events. Now, we're not trying to be greedy. We're not trying to say, hey, this is our project, keep your hands off, and nobody can do it. As a matter of fact, we encourage the other groups to do something similar. I think this is a very good experience. This was your first experience.
Oh, I learned a lot, and I enjoyed it.
And it wasn't as hard as you thought it was going to be.
Oh, deep down inside, I was shaking like a leaf. But we got out there, and things went smooth. I picked it up fairly quickly, I think. I hope I did a good job.
Well, you did an amazing job. You did great. Tigger did great. And I'm certainly grateful for all the people who had not only contributed financially, but contributed with their art. Of course, the art makes much of the show. And, in dealing with people like the Me Too movement, we have art from women's prisons in Arizona and Florida. So, it wasn't just a man thing, it wasn't male art. And Jenny herself contributed to the project. She made 2 pieces of art. And then she also brought 4 pieces from Will, and then I made a couple pieces myself, and I've received some other art from, from some other individuals, but most of the rest was prison art. John from SOSEN, the newest member there,
Yes.
had made art. He was also the one who made the diorama, and sad to say the diorama didn't make it because Amtrak had mishandled the luggage and it had been ruined. So it could have been a lot worse. Speaking of that, some of the art was damaged. Well, actually, the diorama was damaged. One of the glass frames shattered, but it was a photograph, so since I already had the files for the photograph, I could replace that. And thankfully, the other art were in plastic frames, and so when the frames broke, since there was no glass, it didn't shatter, and so it didn't shred the art. So I was able to take the art and put them in some new frames. So this crisis could have been a hell of a lot worse than it was, and trust me, it was frustrating. I mean, it took a whole day. As a matter of fact, I didn't know they found my luggage until the morning of the event. We were already out there when I finally got when they finally got a hold of me and said, "Hey, your stuff is being sent on the bus right now from Boston to Maine." Speaking of Boston and the whole accent thing, we have to tell that story. When we were out,
Oh dear.
we were out buying last-minute supplies, and people that live up in that part of the country have this very unique accent. I mean, one of the biggest things, of course, is that every word that ends with the R sound is more, they say it with the ah sound, so it's like the ka, the ba, let's go get some lobster. And of course, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. Ginny's from California, but she lives in Nebraska. I lived in Alabama for most of my life, so I've got this whole mixture of Midwestern Southern thing going on, and she's got California Midwestern accent going on. And so we found it a little hard to talk to the people in that part of the country.
I was trying to ask someone in a store a question about frames or something, and he did not understand what I was saying. So I used a combination of California, Nebraska, Southern, and Boston accent, and put in wrong words and use things like, "Do y'all know which one would be gooder?" And all of a sudden he caught on and he understood me, and he gave me some really good information. For some reason he understood my bad language when I didn't understand it, and I managed to translate his in my mind somehow, and he was a big help.
Yeah, I know. I think Maine people were very friendly. Of course, we did half a day in Boston, and it was completely different. And then, of course, we took a detour in New York on the way back, a personal trip. Which, of course, that's not anything I do personal is not funded by Once Fallen money. That was
it was
personal
mostly
money.
for me. It was a personal trip for me because I wanted to see the Statue of Liberty and go to Ellis Island.
Yeah.
My grandparents were immigrants from Poland, and they had escaped from one of the concentration camps, and it was a real personal and touching thing to see Ellis Island and find their names.
Well, people do, I'm bringing up the money thing now because people do ask sometimes, well, what do you do with the money? And you're always asking for money. Well, here's the thing. It costs money to go to Maine, and Ginny helped a lot because trains are more expensive than the Greyhound bus normally, but she knew how to get the vouchers for essentially 60 cents on the dollar. So for the price it took for me it would have taken for me to ride a bus up there and back, we were able to get the transportation. So that's where transportation cost goes into that. So she saved Once Fallen a lot of money. And the one thing about Amtrak is, lost luggage aside, you can carry a lot more luggage on
Yes.
the train than you can on the bus before being penalized. And so carry-on luggage on the bus is a backpack. Carry-on luggage on a train is a big piece of luggage. I mean, a full-size piece of luggage.
Yes, you're allowed
And-
2 suitcases instead of just one.
Yes, 2 suitcases, and then you could put 2, in baggage check. Whereas with Greyhound, it's one under the bus and one there. So but that saved a lot of money. Aside from them screwing up with that's a long story in
Yeah,
itself.
somehow it got misdirected.
Yes, but whatever the case may be, that was helpful. So money went to that. Of course, money also went to the hotel. We got to stay somewhere. We stayed in a Super 8 hotel. It was like $100 a night. We had gotten a double room because we were also expecting other volunteers who did not show up. I had also bought displays, which I had bought $100 worth of displays here in Cincinnati, and somebody was supposed to come pick them up and take them to Maine, but never did. So what I ended up having to do was order more displays. I found somebody online in Portland who was selling art displays, and I worked out an arrangement with him, and I spent $50, 60, because I gave him a little bit extra to cover the PayPal costs, and he held on to it for me and for a month until we were able to get there. So money went into that. Money went into framing all of the art to be displayed. Like I said earlier, much of the art that we had was prison art, so a lot of it was on paper, on 8.5 by 11 document paper. I probably spent about, close to $100 on frames, because things were of various sizes. I had, the art up here. This is a 14 by 22 frame up here, so it's a little large, very unusual size. Thankfully, Walmart had these for about $7. So I had 3 of those. And then I had some 9 by 12s, which is also a weird size, so I ended up having to pay close to $10 a piece for those. I got those from Michael's. Then I had bought some art supplies, which I didn't spend a lot on, because art shops tend to have a lot of sales. We spent some money on that, but then of course, we bought Harry too. That was kind of a last minute thing, but it turned out to be a worthwhile investment. And of course, since Amtrak lost my luggage, and I had to go out and buy more supplies I had to go out and buy more frames, go get some stuff printed. Printing 8 by 10s are like $5 a piece. And I had like 6 of those made up, and then of course I had to buy frames for them, which I went to Goodwill and whatnot. What I did not include in our expenses: food. I don't include the price of having to go out and buy personal things. Like when Amtrak lost my luggage, I had to go out and buy some more clothes for myself. That does not count in the Once Fallen budget. Any souvenirs that me and her might have bought, that does not count towards the budget. So the budget went towards transportation, it went towards the art itself, the displays, which includes Harry, the Uber rides to get the stuff from the hotel to to the event and back, and of course getting the public transportation that we used while we were out to do this stuff. Our personal trip to New York obviously was not included in that. That's our own money that we spent, but again, it was just the transportation and the stuff directly related to it, and that's how I've always done it. And she can certainly vouch for me on that, since she was there the whole time. And and I sent her the money to buy the tickets, and of course, she saved me about $300 on tickets. So, but all in all, it still ended up costing us a lot more than we expected it to. But in future events, especially if people invite us to come do these events and they have a place, you know, if they have like a guest room or something, we won't have to spend money on a hotel. The only thing we would have to worry at that point would simply be the transportation costs and the cost of building and display. We bought these wooden displays, and that gave us an idea of how in the future we can build these. I mean, whoever built these, the ones that we used, they weren't really fancy. They were just wooden, you know, some pegboards, some you know, some thin wooden boards, a couple of hinges, and a chain basically to keep it from going out too far. And I think that it would be easy to build these in the future. So in the future, if we want to do these events, what we might want to consider is to just simply go out to Lowe's, you know, spend $30–40 on materials and build them ourselves. It would take only a couple hours, and probably Lowe's can probably cut the pieces the way we want them cut. And
yes, they will.
Yeah, so I think we can easily do this a hell of a lot cheaper in the future. So that's basically it. You know, that's basically the review, the whole 9 yards of everything that happened, everything that it took to put this project together. You know, I thank you for helping me.
I enjoyed it. It was exciting, and I like getting the word out there. I think more people should be able to do these things and participate in these things. If we do this more, I think it'd be good if more people joined in with us. We can always use more.
Yeah, well,
Power in numbers.
Yes, and you know, and the big thing is, I think a lot of people are afraid for some reason. So I mean,
yes.
you were nervous too.
Oh yes, everyone has a fear of failure, and the first time is scary. But once you get your toe in the water, you'll find out that swimming can be fun.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. But I certainly thank you. I thank Tigger.
You're
I thank
very
all,
welcome.
and I thank John. I thank all of SOSEN actually. You know, thanks to all the contributors, and you know, both financially and in terms of the art. The women's prison in Arizona, the women's prison in Florida, the other people who sent me random pieces of art, and stuff. So I hope to have a lot more of these in the future. And of course, got to give a big thanks to the real star of the show back here. So,
Thank you, Harry.
I think he likes you. He's checking you out.
Oh, come on. He only likes me because I'm nicer than you are.
That's what she's like. Anyway, so on behalf of Ginny and SOSEN and myself,
And Harry.
And Harry, of course. Can't forget old Harry. You know, we thank you for your support of this ARM art protest, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.